Growing up as the only child of Boston real estate magnate Mr. Sterling, head of the sprawling Sterling Properties Group, meant navigating a world of privilege and expectation. But when I met Ryan, I thought I'd found something different, something grounded. He was a construction project manager. Hard-working, handsome, charmingly rough around the edges compared to the buttoned-up world I came from. His insecurity about the vast difference in our backgrounds, however, was palpable from the start. Wanting our relationship to work, truly wanting us to work, I made a conscious decision. I downplayed everything. My potential inheritance, my future role leading the company. My current title as Director of Acquisitions Analysis sounded impressive, but I kept the scope vague. The sheer scale of my family's wealth. I kept it all muted, understated. I wanted him to feel like an equal, not like he was marrying into a dynasty that could swallow him whole. For the first few years after our wedding in our late 20s, it seemed to work. We built a comfortable life, lived in a nice brownstone, modest by Sterling standards, but lovely, and found a rhythm. The first real cracks appeared about 2 years in, when the topic of starting a family came up. I raised it gently one evening, expecting shared excitement. Instead, Ryan immediately tensed. Kids? Already? Soph, do you know how much that costs? He countered, a defensive edge to his voice that surprised me. It felt less about timing and more about something else. Resentment, maybe? We tried, nonetheless, or rather I tried, tracking cycles, focusing on health, hoping it would happen naturally. When it didn't within the first year of trying, Ryan's anxiety curdled into blame. Well, it's obviously not me, he declared one night after another month passed with no news. I feel great. It's probably something on your end. His assumption stung, sharp and unfair. That's not necessarily true, Ryan, I said carefully. These things can involve both partners. Maybe we should both get checked out by specialists, just to see if there's anything we can address together. His reaction was swift and angry. Both? Why both? Everyone knows it's almost always the woman's issue. I'm not wasting time and money getting poked and prodded when the problem is clearly with you. You go get tested if you're so worried about it. His refusal, the casual cruelty of his blame, hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't the supportive partner I thought I knew. This was someone letting his insecurities twist into accusations, building a wall between us right where vulnerability was needed most. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This wasn't just about having a baby anymore. It was about the foundation of our marriage, and realizing, with a sickening lurch, how fragile it might actually be. The years following that initial argument about fertility testing blurred into a landscape of quiet erosion. Ryan's resentment simmered beneath the surface, manifesting as emotional distance and work becoming his constant refuge and excuse. Late nights at the construction site turned into after-work drinks with the crew, which sometimes bled into sleeping on a friend's couch because it was too late to drive back. Intimacy dwindled, replaced by a perfunctory duty, or simply avoided altogether. Communication became strained, often descending into his sarcastic jabs about my cushy family job or my supposed inability to understand real-world stress. I felt increasingly alone inside the marriage, the silence in our Boston brownstone growing heavier each year. Hurt and frustrated by his refusal to investigate fertility issues together, I did eventually see a specialist on my own, quietly, without telling him. The results were clear. I had no discernible fertility problems. But sharing that information with Ryan felt pointless. He had already decided I was the problem. Facts wouldn't penetrate the wall of blame he'd built around himself, so I held on to that knowledge, a secret bitterness added to the growing pile of unspoken truths between us. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with the casual chime of a notification on a shared device. It was a Saturday morning. Ryan had left early, claiming a site emergency. I picked up the household iPad we kept on the kitchen counter, intending to look up a recipe. He'd forgotten to log out of his personal message account. A new message notification popped up at the top of the screen. Amber, thinking of last night? Can't wait for next week? Amber. I didn't recognize the name immediately, but the heart and wink emoji sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. My hands trembled as I tapped the notification, opening the message thread. It wasn't just one message. It was months of them. Pet names, my tiger, Princess Amber, explicit references to hotel rendezvous, secret lunches, weekend plans made while he'd supposedly been working late, messages filled with the kind of affection and playful intimacy he hadn't shown me in years. "Miss you like crazy," one read. "This meeting is dragging. Wish I was with you instead," said another, counting down the seconds until Tuesday. Isabel. No, Amber had replied. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. The nausea that rose wasn't just from the betrayal itself, but from the sheer calculated duplicity of it all, while he simultaneously blamed me for our marital problems. I scrolled back, numbly taking photos of the most incriminating exchanges with my own phone before logging him out and placing the iPad back exactly where I found it. The discovery sat like lead in my stomach for the next couple of days. I went through the motions, coolly polite, and the knowledge of his affair, a toxic secret between us, though only I knew it was out. Coincidentally, I had a quarterly review meeting scheduled with my father, Mr. Sterling, that Monday. While discussing portfolio performance, he sighed, rubbing his temples. "And then there's Apex Tech Solutions," he grumbled, shuffling some papers. "Biggest tenant in the tower, paying premium rent, or at least they should be. They're 4 months behind, Sophia. 4 months! Their CEO keeps giving us the runaround, supply chain issues, delayed venture funding, you name it. Nice enough guy on the surface, but Sterling Properties isn't a charity. Legal is drafting the final demand notice this week. If they don't pay up by the 1st, we initiate eviction proceedings." Apex Tech Solutions. The name snagged briefly in my memory. Hadn't Ryan mentioned a friend working at a tech company with a similar name? But the immediate weight of my own marital crisis pushed the thought aside. The tension at home that week was thick enough to cut with a knife. I was withdrawn, barely speaking beyond necessity. Ryan seemed oblivious at first, then perhaps started to sense my shift in demeanor. Maybe he felt cornered, or maybe Amber was pushing him, or maybe he just saw an opportune moment. Whatever the reason, he brought it up Thursday evening. "Soph," he said, avoiding my eyes as he picked at his dinner. "I've been thinking a lot, and maybe this just isn't working anymore for either of us." He finally looked up, trying to appear solemn. "Maybe we should separate?" He likely expected tears, arguments, pleas. What he got was my immediate, cold agreement. "Yes, Ryan," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I think that's an excellent idea." The flicker of surprise in his eyes was almost satisfying. He probably thought this was his decision, his escape plan unfolding. He had no idea I already knew I was just signing off on a departure he'd already made months, maybe years ago. The divorce lawyers were contacted the next day. I moved into a corporate apartment owned by Sterling Properties a week later, leaving Ryan alone in the brownstone we once called home, ready to close this chapter as quickly and cleanly as possible. The divorce from Ryan was finalized with swift, almost anticlimactic efficiency. He didn't contest anything, likely eager to move on with Amber and perhaps oblivious to the full scope of financial details Ms. Miller was handling. For me, the signature on the final decree wasn't about victory, it was about liberation. A clean slate. Instead of crumbling, I poured my energy into the one stable thing I had left, my career at Sterling Properties Group. Free from the need to constantly manage Ryan's fragile ego or downplay my own capabilities, I found myself thriving. I took on more challenging acquisition analyses, spearheaded new property management initiatives, and earned a significant promotion to senior vice president, working closely with my father, Mr. Sterling. The work was demanding, consuming, but deeply satisfying in a way I hadn't allowed myself to experience before. It was part of my healing process, reclaiming my professional identity, proving my worth to myself. Healing wasn't just professional, though. It was quiet evenings in my own comfortable apartment, rediscovering my own tastes without criticism. It was reconnecting with old friends Orion had subtly discouraged me from seeing. It was slowly rebuilding my sense of self, brick by careful brick. About a year after the divorce, friends gently started suggesting I dip my toes back into the dating pool. I was hesitant, wary. But then, at a charity gala for the Boston Symphony, an event Ryan would have scoffed at attending, I met Michael. He was a neurosurgeon, intelligent, kind, with a quiet confidence that was the complete antithesis of Ryan's bluster. He wasn't intimidated by my family name or my role at Sterling Properties. He was genuinely interested in me, Sophia. Our relationship unfolded naturally, built on mutual respect, shared interests, and easy conversation. Michael loved hearing about the complexities of real estate development, and I was fascinated by the intricacies of his work. He was everything Ryan wasn't. supportive, secure in himself, and genuinely proud of my accomplishments. A year after we met, we were married in an intimate ceremony overlooking the Charles River. Surrounded by close friends and my visibly relieved parents, life felt right, peaceful, balanced, genuinely happy. And then the most unexpected joy. I was pregnant. After years of enduring Ryan's blame and my own quiet fears, seeing the positive test felt like a profound, personal vindication, though my happiness was entirely wrapped up in the future I was building with Michael. The specialist I'd seen after the divorce had been right. There was nothing wrong with me. Now, nearly 5 months along, with my bump becoming noticeable and a demanding year behind us both professionally, Michael suggested a relaxing getaway before the baby arrived. A baby moon, he called it. We settled on a luxury resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. Sunshine, spas, golf for Michael, quiet time for me. It felt perfect, a chance to connect and recharge before embarking on our next big adventure together. We booked the flights, excited for a week of pampering and peace, completely unaware of the ghost from my past waiting for me under the desert sun. The Scottsdale resort was an oasis of terracotta tile, lush landscaping, and serene blue pools shimmering under the Arizona sun. I was sitting in the airy lobby lounge, enjoying a prickly pear iced tea in the quiet before Michael returned from his golf game, feeling utterly relaxed. A world away from the chilly pressures of Boston real estate, and that's when I heard it. A loud, braying laugh that was painfully familiar. My head snapped up. There, striding through the lobby like he owned the place, was Ryan. And clinging to his arm was a younger woman, probably early 20s, dressed in aggressively trendy resort wear, dripping with what looked like designer logos. Amber, presumably. They looked tanned, smug, and clearly enjoying a vacation funded by, well, I suspected I knew by whom. They spotted me almost immediately. Ryan's eyes widened slightly, then a slow, condescending smirk spread across his face as he steered Amber directly towards my table. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in," Ryan began, his voice dripping with false bonhomie. "Sophia Sterling, still analyzing property values or just slumming it solo?" I kept my expression neutral, taking a slow sip of my tea. "Hello, Ryan." "Enjoying your trip?" "Trip of a lifetime," he boomed, gesturing grandly. "This is my wife, Amber." Amber offered a tight, dismissive smile, her eyes flicking over my simpler linen dress with obvious disdain. "We're celebrating," Ryan continued, puffing out his chest. "Amber's family. You wouldn't believe it, Soph. Her father runs Apex Tech Solutions. President and CEO. We're talking serious money, serious connections. Finally landed on my feet, you know? Trading up." He grinned, clearly expecting me to be impressed or perhaps wounded. Amber chimed in, her voice sharp. "Daddy's company is huge. Global contracts. We just flew in on the private jet. Apex Tech Solutions." The name landed with a quiet thud in my memory, instantly connecting to my father's recent complaints. I kept my face impassive. "Apex Tech," I repeated mildly. Yes, based out of Boston, right? Headquartered in the Sterling Tower, I believe." Ryan looked momentarily thrown that I knew the name, let alone the location. Yeah, that's them. Prime real estate. Only the best for Apex," he recovered, puffing up again. "Interesting," I mused, swirling the ice in my glass. My father, Mr. Sterling, head of Sterling Properties, the company that actually owns the Sterling Tower, was just mentioning Apex Tech last week. I paused, letting the connection sink in. Apparently they're having some significant cash flow issues. Amber's perfectly sculpted smile froze. Ryan frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Just what my father told me," I continued evenly, meeting Ryan's suddenly wary gaze. "Apex Tech is currently 4 months behind on their rent for multiple floors, a rather substantial sum. Sterling Properties' legal department sent them a final demand notice. If the default isn't cured by the 1st of next month, eviction proceedings are being initiated." The color drained from Amber's expertly tanned face. That can't be right," she stammered, looking at Ryan. "Daddy's been stressed lately, talking about delayed funding, some layoffs, but eviction." The panic in her voice was genuine. Ryan rounded on me, his face flushing red. "You're lying. You're just bitter because I moved on and upgraded. You're trying to ruin this for me." His voice rose. attracting glances from other guests. Bitter? I raised an eyebrow, my voice remaining quiet and calm. Why on earth would I be bitter, Ryan? You leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me. I let that hang in the air before continuing, my tone hardening slightly. And speaking of blame, isn't that always your go-to? Remember how you spent years convincing yourself, and trying to convince me, that I was the reason we couldn't start a family. He flinched. That's different. Is it? I pressed gently. Because after we separated, I finally saw that specialist you refused to see with me. Turns out, my fertility, perfectly fine. Always was. I paused, then deliberately placed a hand on my stomach, where the gentle curve of my 5-month pregnancy was now visible beneath the linen dress. Which is wonderful news, because Michael, my husband, and I are expecting our first child this fall. We couldn't be happier. Ryan stared at my hand, then at my face. His jaw slack, utterly speechless. Amber looked back and forth between us, her earlier confidence completely shattered, replaced by dawning horror and confusion. So, I continued, gathering my purse and standing up, my voice crisp and professional now, echoing my role at Sterling Properties. While I genuinely have no interest in your personal drama, Ryan, delinquent tenants are a business concern. I looked directly at Amber, whose face had crumpled. I'd strongly advise you to tell your father, the president and CEO of Apex Tech Solutions, to contact Mr. Sterling's office immediately on Monday morning to discuss arranging payment for those overdue millions in rent and penalties. Eviction proceedings are messy and, frankly, quite public. I gave them both a cool, polite nod. Enjoy the rest of your celebration. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked calmly away, leaving them standing there amidst the wreckage of their boasts and illusions. Behind me, I could already hear the distinct sound of Amber's shrill voice beginning to turn on a stunned and silent Ryan. Returning to Boston, and Michael's warm embrace felt like stepping back into brilliant sunshine after emerging from a long, shadowed tunnel. The rest of the Scottsdale vacation was blissful, undisturbed by any further encounters with Ryan or Amber. Their frantic argument echoed briefly in my memory, then faded, replaced by the happy anticipation of our future. Weeks later, back in the rhythm of work at Sterling Properties, I saw an internal memo circulate from our legal department regarding the Apex Tech Solutions account. Just as my father had indicated, they were indeed severely delinquent. The memo outlined a strict, restructured payment plan Apex had been forced to agree to under threat of immediate eviction and litigation, along with rumors of significant internal layoffs at their company. It confirmed Amber's panic wasn't unfounded, and that Ryan's dreams of coasting on her family's supposed fortune were built on shaky ground, at best. I noted the information with detached interest, then archived the memo without a second thought. Their precarious future was their own problem to navigate. Mine, however, felt more secure and joyful than I could have ever imagined. My focus was entirely forward, on my healthy, supportive marriage with Michael, on the satisfying challenges of my expanded role at Sterling Properties, where I no longer felt the need to apologize for my competence, and, most wonderfully, on the nursery. Michael and I were happily decorating in shades of soft green and yellow, feeling the baby kick, sharing quiet evenings with a partner who celebrated my successes and genuinely admired my mind. This was the life I had unknowingly longed for. Sometimes looking out over the Boston skyline from my office window, I reflect on the strange path my life had taken. The years spent trying to shrink myself to fit into Ryan's insecure world felt like a lifetime ago, a lesson learned in the harshest way possible, hiding my background, minimizing my potential. It hadn't saved the marriage. It had only starved it of honesty. True partnership, I now knew, wasn't about diminishing oneself, but about finding someone who champions your light, as Michael did for me. My family's wealth was a fact of my life, not the definition of it. The real fortune was discovering my own strength, embracing my capabilities, and building a life, and soon a family, founded on mutual respect, genuine affection, and unapologetic truth. The contentment I felt wasn't about having won against Ryan. It was the quiet, profound peace of finally being wholly, authentically myself, living a life I had designed, a life I truly loved.